Send in your comments, questions as we go through. Now, here's PBD going through it. And PBD always cracks me up. He's like, hey, so-and-so, can you pull up that? And he never just says, he's like, can you pull up that? Funny guy.
Housing Director confirms administration 50-year mortgage.
Trying to find an answer on affordability for housing, which right now we're seeing one of the worst housing markets that we've seen in recent times. And so the 50-year mortgage is a play to lower people's monthly mortgage payments. But the downside is, especially early on, all of that payment will be going to interest. And of course, since you're paying over 50 years and not over 30 years, you're going to be paying off that mortgage for a lot longer. So the details are still to be worked out, but it looks to be like the president's looking for a quick fix to a market that is fundamentally broken right now.
Okay, so this guy's a Democrat, right? Because you see in the back, if you zoom in on the books.
Now, here's the thing. That's not a fix, because the problem is not the length of the mortgage. The problem is the affordability. The problem is the weakness of the dollar. The problem is the low level of skill of the average American. The problem is cultural. The problem is policy. The problem is taxes. The problem is that we're a declining empire. The problem is not, should it be a 30-year mortgage or a 50-year or fill in the blank. So it's not a fix. Fix is completely the wrong word. It's a scam.
You'll see the New Deal. Go back a little bit. Right. Oh, do you know, while this guy's saying this, it's so funny. Do you know who came up with the, can you right there, Rob? Can you pull that up? Here's who came up with the 30-year mortgage.
What a dweeb. This guy, Adam, is a totally disgusting individual. It's like he doesn't have enough brains to realize that PBD wants to unveil the president who came up with the 30-year mortgage. So PBD says it twice, like, hey, Rob, pull that up. Can we talk about who came up with the 30-year mortgage? And then you got Adam's goofy ass over here like, FDR? FDR is like, dude, we all know he's trying to like tease that for the audience. Can you shut up, dummy boy? Like, how can you be that dim-witted and also be from the, the tribe of people who are supposed to have the very high IQs? Extraordinary, like, goofy little rascal.
Can you right there, Rob? Can you pull that up? Here's
I'm gonna rewind it. You're gonna hear Patrick asking the question, wanting to tease it for the audience, and then you hear Goofy Boy in the background, who has no ability to take social cues. Somebody send him the Master Communicator course or Boston University, because he really needs to be tuned up.
They're reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crash.
Do you know while this guy's saying this, it's so funny. Do you know who came up with the 30-year mortgage?
Who?
Do you know who came up with the 30-year mortgage?
that?
I want you to think about, can you right there, Rob? Can you pull that up? Here's who came up with the 30-year mortgage.
FDR.
Yeah, FDR.
And he says it twice, like he wasn't heard the first time. It's like, you're not a little kid. You're a grown man. Stop seeking attention. Now, let's be real here. The dude on the far right, the older white guy, we all know he's a smart guy. So why is it that he's not calling out like the dumb guy, Adam? Well, it's because he's man enough to know I don't need to be in the center of attention. I don't have to get patted on the head like, you're smart, you're smart. Only dumb people feel the need to get patted on the head and be called smart. The other guy was wise enough to know, like, be silent. Pat's doing something. He's setting up something. Let's listen. Let's let him do his thing without interrupting him. And these are the kind of basics that I cover in the Master Communicator course, basics in communication. Then I get to the higher level things. But I have to cover the basics, because sometimes if you commit faux pas or you fail to assess like the temperature of the room, it's going to hurt you. Me, I would be in this room looking at this guy like, this guy's an imbecile. I'm not doing any business with him. He's a total moron.
Came up with the 30-year mortgage.
I don't know if it's that thermostat that's really pumping right now, but if you could just like turn it 2 degrees below what it says it is.
So did you say the same thing back in the days, fellow? I don't know what your name is, but well-spoken guy a minute ago.
Crashed.
So he did 30 years. Trump's going to 50 years. By the way, Tom, the question is, if you're a bank, would you get into the 50-year business game? Would we do that knowing you're collecting the interest up front? Would you enter?
Well, I think the banks would do that. Well, in capitalism, you have to compete. If one bank decides to do a 50-year mortgage program and you're going to attract a high volume of customers, theoretically, you may be dealing with a finite number of customers or a finite share of the market. You might be taking away from people's market share because you're doing the 50-year and they're not. So they're going to have to compete. So of course they're going to do a 50-year. It's basically like saying, if so-and-so selling Teslas and another guy's going to create a cheaper version of Tesla, will anyone compete with them, or just going to let them have it? Like, no, there's going to be competition. And in fact, there's going to be a race to the bottom. So for sure, other banks are going to get involved in that 50-year deal, because a lot of consumers who are mathematically illiterate, which is most Americans, they are looking for what's going to work for their current budget, not their future budget. So the lower monthly payment is always going to be an attractive deal. So of course, banks are going to get into it.
10 to 30 versus 50, because how do you set it up? You still have to find a way to make it profitable for the banks, right?
Right.
So the bank has to get their money, or else there's no incentive for them to want to sell this loan. Okay? What would be the incentive for banks to sell 50-year loans?
Well, as long as they felt.
Now, mind you, this is probably the same conversation that was had when the banks were going from the 5 to 10-year short-term loans to the 30-year, which was also a huge increase. In fact, it was much bigger of an increase from a percentage standpoint. There's that. Number two, also observe how Pat bet David, the back of his chair is just rocking and shaking the whole time. These kind of people, especially males with this nervous energy, I don't really like men who lack peace. It kind of it lets you know something's off with them. Look at the back of
30
the
versus
chair.
50, because how do you set it up?
The chair is shaking because he just keeps gyrating his leg. It's like, bro, chill.
You still have to find a way to make it profitable for the banks, right?
Right.
So the bank has to get their money, or else there's no incentive for them to want to sell this loan. Okay? What would be the incentive for banks to sell 50-year loans?
Well, as long as they felt that the underlying asset wasn't going to drop. Now, so here's what the bank has to do. Your house is the collateral. You stop paying Vinny, I'm going to take your house, I'm going to sell it to the next guy. Mm-hmm. That's what a bank will do. We'll auction it. He'll auction it off. Now then, what it means, Pat, is the first 10 years of that 50-year loan, the bank has to underwrite it and be comfortable that that house won't decline in value. You follow that? Because not much will be paid off in 10 years, Pat. Not much at all. So if you...
So what he's saying applies to a 30-year loan as well, but carry on.
You and I, Tom and Pat's bank, and we do a 50-year mortgage, our underwriting has to say, are we sure that house is not going to go down in these first 10 years?
Yeah.
Because if we have to seize the house, and
none of this is very interesting for people who have had any minimal experience in real estate. You know that before the loan is finalized, you have all kinds of assessments and appraisals, and it has a strong sense of what the house is worth. And generally, we know that real estate appreciates. So what he's saying is just basics. It's almost not even worth saying.
Auction it, we got to make sure that underwrites. 62 is the payment. 50-year, 6 1/4, 400,000, 2179. So about a 3.
So I'm gonna now he's getting to some numbers. So let's see.
But I just did a little analysis. 30-year, 400,000.
Okay, so we're talking about a $400,000 house on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage.
6 1/4, 2,462 is the payment.
$2,462 is the payment. So we'll just round it to $2,400 is the monthly.
50-year, 6 1/4, 400,000, 2179. So
I think he's saying the interest rate is 6.25.
50-year, 6 1/4, 400,000, 2179.
So he said the payment for a 50-year mortgage is $2,100. Personally, I don't find that to be a significant difference. Now, sure, for some people that's going to make a legitimate difference, but the truth is it's not major, and certainly not a big enough difference to go from a freaking 30-year mortgage to a 50-year mortgage. So you're basically being scammed, and you're being forced into this position because A, you've been brainwashed into the idea that you need to own a house. Ownership is everything, and ownership can make sense in certain circumstances. So you've been taught that you need to own a house. That's number one. So you're culturally driven, and some people identify that as a part of maturity. So you're conditioned, yeah, I got to buy a house, I got to buy a house. And then secondly, because you grew up in a debt slash credit society, you think it's okay to be in all forms of debt and to be financially pinched, especially if you grew up in poverty. You think being financially pinched and barely making ends meet, you think that's life. And you don't have any greater expectations, most people. You figure out how to manage while living or subsisting in that way. So, with that being the case, it's easy to end up in these predatory situations. And, you know, this might not even be considered officially a predatory loan, but it is in fact a predatory loan. Who would want to be obligated to work for the next 50 years? That's basically what you're doing. Whereas if you didn't own a house, you could stop working. But basically, a 50-year mortgage is an agreement to work for the next 50 years because low income people, which are the ones who would get this, they don't have passive income. They don't have retirement plans and 401ks. And frankly, Social Security probably won't even be functioning by the time they're old enough to use it. So this is why we need revolution. It's not to create a socialist or a communist system, but just to create a system that's an honest capitalist system. We have far too much thuggery and dishonesty in the current one. Shout out to Frank supporting the work, came in using the Stripe link in the description. I also acknowledge Miles came back via PayPal, writes, Peace of the Saints. I heard this proposal. I about fell out of my chair. The audacity to even propose something so idiotic is insane. Well, the only thing more idiotic than the proposal are the people who will actually take the 50-year mortgage. And I think that there's a good number of those persons. And, frankly, there's a portion of them that will do it because they lack understanding and experience. And then there's another portion that'll do it just because they're not terribly bright. And, it's not upon our leadership class to take advantage of people who lack understanding. In often cases, it's not that they lack understanding because they're dimwits. Sometimes they lack understanding because they've not been exposed to the information. I mean, again, you went to government schools, public schools. They didn't explain to you how a mortgage works. Of course they didn't, but they probably should have, right? Anyways, gentleman writes, it's truly revolutionary times. This has debt slavery written all over it. Oh, indeed. And there's no way some of these houses will ever stand tall for 50-year loan. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that one. I also acknowledge Wayne writes, Peace of the Saints tuition. Shout out to Seven writes, Peace of the Saints. How did you feel being on the ground in Texas and spreading the ism? How did you feel afterward? I really enjoyed it. I've been increasingly impressed every time I touch down in the state of Texas. It's nearly its own country. Each of the major cities has its own flavor. Very well developed. People getting on peacefully and way more diverse than I expected. And Dallas, just very diverse, beautiful place with beautiful people. So I very much so enjoyed it. The section there, SAS and DFW, great, honorable men, very militant, did very well with the security detail. We also had a great time, really organized. Shout out to Quat, the executive there. So it was a pleasure just to see what we've built, and a lot of people really mess with the ism. Anyways, but a lot of people really mess with the ism. Sorry about that. I don't know if that was like a fire alarm warning or what have you. But a lot of people mess with the ism, and when we're moving around the city, a lot of folks, whether they're driving by or riding by, they just hollering "Peace of the Saints." So we're really well positioned to take over all of these cities, and we shall. So, and thank you for asking. I appreciate that. And shout out to all those folks who are actually a part of this thing of ours. You heard me? Not the casuals, not the people who just showed up yesterday. Shout out to the real ones. Also, Jefferson writes, support for the Kick Live. And I think he was the first person who came in. He actually came in before I even started. And also just another piece on economy. A lot of the things that you're hearing from your political class, just frankly, are not true. These tariffs are being paid by people like you and I. You may go on a number of my sites and find that certain product categories are gone, and that's because of the tariffs. So, for example, I had to remove the there's a number of hoodie products, the denim jean jacket product, the soap product, because of the countries that they're manufactured in. I had to remove them because the tariffs are expensive, such that it's cost prohibitive. Now, here's the kicker. One thing that Donald doesn't tell you is that though you're not going to produce it abroad, I'm also not going to produce it in America because the product would be too expensive. Or in some cases, we don't have the craftsmen, artisans, or manufacturing hubs to produce in general, whether it's producing at the right cost or just producing in general. And that's what he doesn't tell you. So what it actually leads to is not for manufacturing to come back to America in some cases. It just limits the number of products and the diversity of products that American consumers have access to. And I've already paid a number of tariffs from various countries, products coming from Latvia, products coming from Australia. And what we can say for sure is that tariffs are a tax on Americans, because I've paid tariffs and I've reduced product offerings based on tariffs. So it's like he turns around and wants to cut a $2,000 check. I'd already spent that in tariffs. So what are you doing here, buddy? Maybe for the people who aren't doing business, maybe it's a check for them. But the truth is they're going to cough up that money anyways, because the products that they do get from certain countries are going to be more expensive. So the Donald has just lied and lied and lied. And at some level, he's just really outmatched and doesn't realize it. And so we're all suffering the Dunning-Kruger effect and secondhand embarrassment at the Donald's actions. He's way, way, way beyond what he's capable of.
So about a $300 difference on a $400,000 mortgage. However, next to no principal is paid off in those first 10 years. Very little. And then it accelerates. So for the banks, more people will qualify using standard, ratios and measurements. But the bank better be sure that those houses don't drop in those first 10 years.
Rob, go back to where you were at right there a minute ago. Watch this. So this is 30-year payment, 30-year loan, 366, 40, $2,400.
Now, this is actually a really good calculation here to look at. And it looks like maybe it's from someone's Instagram or Facebook page. I don't know who that is. But either way, it shows you three different term amounts, 30-year, 40-year, 50-year. It shows the monthly payments. For the 30-year standard, $2,700 rounding. For the 50-year, it's $2,300 rounding. To me, it's not a huge difference monthly, but I'll tell you what is a huge difference. You look at the total interest paid. You go to the 30-year versus the 40-year, the 50-year, it's almost double. That's a huge difference in the amount of interest paid, almost twice as much. And then if you look at the total paid over a lifetime, over the life of the loan, the 30-year, you're going to pay $966,000. Okay, cool. On the 50-year, you're paying $1.4 million. So you're paying so much more money. And this is not because this is for the same house, right? So what it's letting you know is that this is an instrument that's empowering banks to take more money from American citizens. That's what it is. And here's the comedy, though. Check this out. This is what's particularly evil. They're taking money from the American citizens who have the least money. And I'm no Robin Hood. You heard me? I'm not like a save the poor, socialist, communist guy. But I am about honesty and decency. And this is indecent. This is very indecent.
Maybe $150, $130. No, you save $270. And eventually end up paying $658,000, $200,000 more.
A scam.
And then 50 years is $2,272.
You got Adam in the background interrupting. Just no manners. Shout out to Constantine supporting the work by Venmo. Appreciate you. Also acknowledge. Shout out to Mr. Graham. He writes, Peace to Saints tuition. If only people would become more financially literate. Even hearing people say refinance hurts my head. Adding more front-loaded interest on a new loan. Oof, that part. And still, you got to break that down, what you're saying. Shout out to 7. He writes, regardless of Trump's execution, were tariffs a good strategy? No. But here's the thing. if you're going to have a tariff war, you need to apparently plan it out, because what Trump did not estimate was China's highly effective retaliation with the rare earths. And he started off with big talk, playing hardball, and very quickly he had to backpedal. And that just shows you that he did not really understand the chessboard. So tariffs could have been a good strategy, but he wasn't well positioned for this war. And so he got obliterated, and really he lost on two ends. He lost because American consumers seeing rising inflation and rising product costs, and they're going to see less diversity of product options on the marketplace. And then he also gets embarrassed on the international stage. So it's like, what did he gain? And of course, in many cases, manufacturing is not going to come back to America. Like, Americans don't want to make shoes. They don't want to make low cost garments. They don't want to do garment assembly. So it's like you put us in a situation where we can't buy the Adidas sneakers that we might want, but we also are not going to produce the Adidas replacement. And if we do, it's going to be much more expensive. Shout out to Seven. He writes, for a healthy family which evolves into a culture or society, what metrics would you use to define productivity/success? I keep hearing Republicans referencing GDP. Very good. As if it's the only true measure of success. Well, GDP is actually only a relevant measure of success if you're comparing countries. And I think that the Westerners, if you will, are just very controlling animals, and their goal is to outdo everyone, not to be happy themselves, but to be concerned with them projecting the image of dominating, controlling, and outdoing every other group of people, every other civilization. And for that, GDP is a great measure for that. Oh, our economy is bigger than your economy. It doesn't take into account wealth and inequality, which I don't think that everyone needs to be equal. It doesn't take, which would be a Gini coefficient. It doesn't take into account per capita income, which is a much more important consideration of the health of a nation. So I'd probably look at wealth inequality. It shouldn't be too bad. I would also look at per capita income, and I would look at levels of the rankings of math and science scores. And I think collectively that would be a good assessment of where a society and culture stands, and if they're able to compete among the nations of the world such that they might have a high quality of life. Thank you for that question, and thank you for supporting.
Which is $142 less of the 40-year, and you end up paying $863 long term. So,
what's the price of the house?
Yeah,
it's based on $500,000. What is this?
I think
what's
that's
the
a
interest rate?
$500,000 loan. It's a $500,000, 5% fixed.
Yeah.
Okay, PBD. I mean, you already know where I stand on this.
By the way, I just want to say this man's wearing a toupee, and I want everyone to know I'm the first person to point out that this brother is wearing a toupee. Oh, you knew that? Look at this. Gray on the sides, but all black on the top. Here's the other thing. Male pattern baldness. I'm in larges for you guys too. Male pattern baldness. And let me know if you can see my cursor as I go through. You don't have male pattern baldness, right? He has the thinning on the temples, and then you have the hairline that's perfectly sitting where it should be if you were like in your late 20s. His temples are in their like 50s, but his hairline is in its late 20s. Impossible. Further, this short growth shows the graying. You never see any graying on the top at all. It's because it's fake hair. And it doesn't even look right. And also a good way to look if someone has fake hair is the origin of the hairs, especially the ones in the front. Like PBD, for example.
I know you're running your...
See right there, there's a direct shot right there. And this hairline, which is curiously straight as opposed to being curved, is all dark hair. You can't really see the origin of the hairs very well. There's no graying whatsoever. This is a wig. Like, he's a grown man with a damn lace front. That's crazy. Insanity. Now let's go to PBD real quick. And I don't want to skip ahead on accents. Oh, there's PBD coming right up. Okay.
Your numbers. What are you thinking on this right now?
Well, here,
Boom, there's PBD. Now, PBD's hair makes perfect sense for what I just described. You see the curvature of the hairline. It's not a straight line across like the other dude who had the wig surgery. This is a curved situation. You can also see the origin of the hairs much better because they're actually going into his goddamn scalp. We further see that the temples, though curved, have the same level of thickness and coloration consistently through. This is PBD's actual hair.
here's the thing, Adam. I've never lost money buying a house because the math on buying a house is the following. Here's the math on buying a house. Okay, let's just kind of do. You know, if you just do the flat interest, you're not making a lot of money. If I buy a $600,000 house, how much down payment am I putting on a $600,000 house, Tom? If I got a 750 credit score,
$600,000 house, you'll have to put down about
10%?
120.
20%. Okay.
20% you have to put down?
Okay. Let's just say. Let's just type in Rob. If I have a $600,000 house, 750 credit score, how much down payment would I need to put?
Well, the real question is, well, why would you say you have a 750 credit score? The average U.S. credit score is about 715, which is significantly lower than 750. That's considered good. So that being the case, I don't know if we should quite call it 750. Carrying on.
Put down. Can I do 10%?
Vinny, my boy Vinny's going to get a VA.
Like there are some states who give you a first-time home.
Yeah, that's what first time. Let's just say 10%.
Yeah.
So if I do first time, I'm putting $60K down,
And
right?
you have to pay P&I.
So I'm financing
$60K, and the average American doesn't have $2,000 in savings. So he's saying you have to put down $60K. So he's already being very generous in terms of the amount of savings that the borrower would have, in terms of the credit score the borrower would have, and also the assumed lifespan that the borrower would live to be at least 90 years old to pay the thing off.
40 is what I'm financing. Okay. So now, what is the rate of return on real estate the last decade?
5%.
Okay.
If that.
But what I'm saying is fine.
Sure.
Go 5%. If we do 5% on that 600K, 5% on 600K over 10 years, 6 to 7% average, let's take 6%. Okay. So what is the price of this $600,000?
So all of this little thought journey that he's going on is largely irrelevant. And in fact, I'd say it's actually a red herring and digression from the main topic. So I'm